Welcome one more day to space in harmony. A new opportunity to go deep into our true essence, the tree of lives. And today I bring for you a profound revelation, or a series of revelations concerning the manifestation of our true being of light in the middle of all the lies that entrap the old being of light which fell millennia ago in the so-called Garden of Eden. And we must remember that some of us already have a new body of life and a new mind of light, which makes us representatives of the primordial source and gives us the ability to discern all this deception in which we are existing. This was already communicated in ancient times, but obviously the information got lost in religious translations. And at the end, I will also speak about some traditional remedies which have been very effective for this sort of viral infections that are causing so much trouble nowadays. But first, let's realize that behind all this spectacle, which is taking place worldwide, there is much more than just a pandemic. Do not forget that the most widely used socio-political strategy has always been the smokescreen, distractions, the Trojan horse. People believe one thing, but what is happening behind the scenes is a totally different thing. I don't know if you have noticed that there are lots of people who are recording strange sounds in the skies, like the famous hum. There are several types of the hum, as well as many unidentified flying objects, the UFOs, and portals in the sky. And one view is that many fallen beings are being taken out, and many of them can no longer stand the raising of vibrations in the planet. And surely, many messengers of light are also coming to help. In other words, darkness will have lots of problems since we are not going to give them any chance to keep doing the evil they are doing. We are millions of beings waking up in a period of open hunting, the separation of the wheat from the tares, and the lizard soup is served on a platter, silver platter, we may say. That is precisely why many try to scare us with their global control threats, with viruses, which mostly work with very intoxicated and weak people, and not by chance, since elites want to target those first, because the elites are comprised of coward psychopaths. But don't forget that in this world, everything are appearances, but the truths are always in front of us. Concealment is not as great as many believe. There is no such a huge conspiracy because everything is in front of us. Even the old Heraclitus said once that if the senses were telling the truth, the sun would have the width of a human foot. Actually, almost everyone believes that the sun is a ball of fire, that it emits heat, that it gives light directly, but this is not so, because heat is generated within the atmosphere, and the sun does not give light directly. It absorbs it in two directions. That was even revealed by several sages and prophets. And I attest this is true because as a child I remember coming from an infinite light that feeds all the stars. Actually, I suspect the environment in which I found myself in that memory was probably a star. And as the Nazarene Master already said, you are the light of the cosmos, especially in this world of darkness, which needs our help because people cannot see. They have a blindfold in their eyes. Even ancient teachings told that many beings came here from other solar systems. Only true beings of light care for the human race, but they can also get contaminated. And this was probably the case with Abraham, the father of nations, who wanted to liberate people from idolatry. But Abraham, as I've already mentioned in other videos, was a type of star seed that got mixed up, and his teachings were stolen and misinterpreted by those who wanted to counterfeit the influence of light, of true light. And from there came 5 great religions: Judaism, Christianity, Islam, as well as Hinduism and Buddhism. I spoke about this in the video, The Transmission of the Light Seed, I think. Anyway, we must remain peaceful in conscience in spite of all this, because everyone who laughs at us, everyone who laughs at those messengers of light who come to help, those who try to exterminate us by all means, are sick souls and fallen spirits, and as the Master said, they are children of their father the accuser, the father of lies. It is not by chance that the tricks of the father of lies abound more in the 3 bloodiest religions, which are mostly based on the ideas of the Bible, which are basically a falsification of the Torah of light, a mixture of great truths and big lies. Actually, the adversary has been so successful because he has falsified our teaching of light, which came from star seeds, symbolized, for instance, by Joseph, who ruled in Egypt without succumbing to any trap. And in my conclusion, from the Israelites who were captive in Egypt, certain teachings emerged, but these were twisted by Egyptians who had Luciferian souls, we might say. For example, the idea of the incarnation of the salvific solar being. Actually, there was a name associated with the incarnation of the salvific solar being, and this was known as YHWH, Ahosha. This was even explained by some experts in Egypt, Gerald Massey, for instance, and we see the same name in the Torah or even the Gospels when we hear about Yehoshua, Yahoshua, Yahosha. That's one of the forms. Even in Gaelic, it is written Yosa, even though it's pronounced Aisa. And notice how Celtic Christianity was never influenced by Rome, and very old truths were preserved in it. But I reserve all this for another video because it's a profound subject. Many solar cults in ancient times, even the Druidic cults, did not understand that the true spiritual light comes from the central sun beyond all stars. It comes from our absolute solar home. Now, with all this in mind, we can be more aware of where we are and how the masses are being controlled and hypnotized. Because the great deception is not only lies, but lies mixed with great truths, especially in the field of religion, politics, and science. And all this was communicated to me even in the form of dreams and visions, but I never understood until I studied certain texts and research with other beings of light. And it took me 20 years to begin to understand more deeply. Now I'm amazed at how asleep I was in the past. Look, years ago, I had a dream vision where I was shown a kind of parliament with all kinds of political leaders. In front of a giant screen were symbols of the Sumerian Babylonian culture, the Roman religion, the Nazis, and other traditions were displayed. And in this dream, I understood almost everything, because I was connected to my true being of light, to my true mind. But when I woke up, my personality barely remembered anything. I understood nothing. However, today I begin to remember, and this starts to make a lot of sense. I have already spoken in other videos about the princes, the Sarim, the Archontoi, Archons, as they were known in Greece, who according to ancient traditions governed the nations, and very few texts are as precise as one by Plato, which we find in his dialogue Critias, and this text literally left me with the mouth open. I leave it on the blog, but it says as following. Once upon a time, the gods were taking over by lot the whole earth according to its regions. And when they had thus settled them, they reared us up, even as herdsmen rear their flocks, to be their cattle and nurslings. Only it was not our bodies that they constrained by bodily force, like shepherds guiding their flocks with a stroke of a staff, but they directed from the stern, from the unconscious, where the living creature is easiest to turn about, laying hold on the soul by persuasion, as by a rudder, according to their own disposition, and thus they drove and steered all the mortal kind. Now let's understand that if they govern humanity by means of persuasion, what they do is bind the will of people. Therefore, it is people who, out of ignorance and vanity, choose to be possessed and enslaved through ritualistic religion, demagogic politics, destructive technology, the ridiculous culture of entertainment, and indoctrination in the schools and educational institutions in general. And that is selling oneself out to be possessed by fallen spirits, fallen souls, all sorts of dark influences. Actually, I think possession comes from Poseidon, the god that, according to Plato, was in charge of Atlantis. And his trident represents, as I've already mentioned in other occasions, false will, false conscience, and false personality. And with those three, that fallen type of spirit, and even fallen soul, gave birth to an offspring of 10 kings who ruled Atlantis, according to Plato. And Triton, the son of Poseidon, was represented as half serpent and half human, because these people were inhabited by amphibian draconian souls, which were taking control of their mind and bodies. My conclusion is that those souls were surely some of the Adamic beings that fell in the Garden of Eden, and those figures became the famous Prometheus, fallen Lucifer, which was the bearer of light. And the kind of technocratic government that took place in Poseidonic Atlantis is what shadow rulers tried to rebuild by establishing the basis from the late 18th century, which was the so-called century of enlightenment, the age of the enlightened ones. Actually, after several wars of religion, many in Europe were fed up with religion and believed that they were free of religious principles, but they actually promoted their own secular politics and religion. This was the case of Adam Weishaupt, who founded the Society of the Illuminati, the Enlightened Ones, in Bavaria in 1776. And curiously, he was friend of some of the instigators of the French Revolution in 1789. Then the absolute monarchy was overthrown in France, as you may know, and a rational religion was established with an idol that was the goddess Reason. Reason itself was worshipped as if it was the solution to everything. And this is how the mix of science, religion, and politics was resurrected. This originated the positivistic science of the 19th century, which gave rise to the Second Industrial Revolution, and then the third industrial revolution in the 20th century. And as you surely know as well, in 1776, the independence of the 13 colonies of North America was declared, and this was the birth of the United States of America. In 1782, the US seal was designed with a Latin inscription that says Annuit Septis Novus Ordo Seclorum, which means announcing the conception of a new order of the centuries, of the ages. And for me, the founding fathers, such as George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, were not evil Freemasons, as some are saying today. They wanted to promote a land of freedom and diversity. However, there were parasites ruling very dark organizations that took advantage of those conditions of relative freedom and opened the door to Luciferic souls who considered themselves empowered to govern over the masses. That had already happened in Atlantis, in Egypt, Sumeria, China, and many other places of the planet. And now within the United States of America, two sides began to fight, but they were part of a very old conflict. Now, today many believe that a new world order will be established very soon in the future, but in reality the foundations of the old world order have been working for a very long time. This is not hidden. Look at the world around, with all the violence, poverty, confusion. That's what people have accepted. Even in 1935, the US seal was printed on the back of the dollar, so everyone can see the pyramid structure of society. If you are rich, if you are a member of some corporation, you control on the top. If not, you are just a slave. Everyone is a slave within the pyramid, but there are stronger slaves. This is why it's preposterous to think all this is an order of freedom. The ancient order of slavery has been ruling over, and today these supposedly programs of freedom are financed by the banks of those who call themselves Jews but are not Jews, because Jew comes from YEHUDAH, which means to be a door for being, true love, life, light, and serenity. And these qualities are not cultivated by those who claim power over others. And there was a Jewish thinker named Arthur Koestler who wrote a book called The 13th Tribe, where he postulated that the Ashkenazi Jews did not descend from genuine lines like the Sephardic Jews of Spain and so on, but they descended from Turkish Cathars who were converted into Judaism, established an alliance with the Roman Empire, conquering many areas, especially Eastern Europe. And in the Middle Ages, Germany came to be known as Ashkenaz, because it was mostly ruled by Ashkenazis. And their alliance with the Roman Empire still lasts, but it is now between the Catholic Church and the banks of the Ashkenazis, which are Zionist leaders, most of which are atheists. They believe in their God, which is Lucifer himself, the fallen spirits and souls. And the Catholic Church depends on Zionist banks. And the famous Hitler, who was Austrian, not German, descended from Ashkenazi Jews. The Nazis got funding actually from Anglo-Saxon banks and Ashkenazi banks, such as JP Morgan. This is filmed in video, this is history. I'm not making this up. And today, all the big corporations form an oligarchy, a government of many, which is the structure of the old government. And it tries to finance and build up the new Atlantis, which would be the new world order of the centuries. However, this is not going to be successful in the timelines where true light beings are still working. This is what they want to avoid, and that's the reason why they study the past, applying subliminal methods of persuasion, including the religion of terror, which comes from many thousands of years ago, the Nazis themselves were obsessed with the Atlanteans and Hyperboreans because they thought they were their ancestors. They spoke of the Aryan race, all of which is imprecise. The Nazis did not understand that the Hyperboreans are true spiritual souls that are not contaminated by the world. But obviously the Nazis were able to develop some technology, and the best German scientists came to work in NASA, as some of you may know, in the Paperclip project. And I think it was von Braun who said that their technology came from those above. That explains why NASA gave key names to their machines. Atlantis spaceship, Apollo mission, they even named the plateau of Mars as Cydonia. This plateau is where they found the famous face and the pentagonal pyramid, which is also reflected on the building of the Pentagon. And it does not seem a coincidence either that the structure of Atlantis appears also in the seal of the United Nations, as well as the seal of the World Health Organization. And the idea is to make a planet where everyone is a technological slave, something for which they need to reduce the population, implant technology all over, eliminate problematic races, especially blood types which facilitate the incarnation of true light. This is why they want to modify genetics. And all this is known as eugenics, or good genetics, good for the incarnation of Luciferic souls. Hence the idea of sterilizing by generating the third sex, the transgender ideology, which causes infertility and generates enough psychological problems to allow the incarnation of many beasts. But as I said, they also target the weak, which are the old people and children, who are victims of abuse not only through pedophilia and ritual sacrifice, but also through imposed religion, which nullifies completely the conscience and will. And of course, food, water, and the environment are being polluted on purpose to make people sick. This is obvious. And all this agenda is public, it's not hidden. Even movies tell about it. So no one can say, I didn't know. That's the funny thing. Everything is before our eyes, so we choose evil, even at will. For example, in Georgia, we find the famous guidestones where it is openly communicated that the population must be kept below 500 million. The question will be, who the hell are they to say such a thing? It is true that in this planet the population is too large, but trying to reduce this population so that a few psychopaths take control over the resources is already too much, I think. The only way to lower the population harmoniously would be to increase the quality of spiritual vibrations, because with a low level of conscience and consciousness, the earth obviously releases energies that people cannot transform. They cannot transform the sexual energy, for instance, and therefore people reproduce faster, like rabbits. And obviously, most of the annual deaths by disease are caused by abnormal conditions of life, or rather non-life. Even the so-called viruses, which are mostly artificial, like SARS, which is actually the one that is causing trouble now. There is not a pandemic of coronavirus. That's a big lie. It is known that strains of SARS were released in China, Italy, and the Middle East. All that was very well programmed, mostly to make economy unstable, to promote other businesses, and still the number of deaths in this so-called pandemic is lower than the number of deaths by pneumonia and flu in previous years. Because people mostly die of pneumonia and flu-like symptoms, even in this pandemic. All this is related, obviously, there is suggestion, and above all that, I think it's still people who give their will to power-possessing beings, supporting religion, politics, a crazy psychopathic science, and the hypnotic culture of entertainment. So we are contemplating a massive consented rape. Sadly, people believe everything which is vomited on the news, the manipulated books, and so on. And almost everyone thinks very little and obeys sociopaths because they were indoctrinated. They were literally treated as dogs in schools and other educational institutions. Because of an animal education, in general, people are only interested in sleeping, eating, socializing with those who are of the same race or the same creed as them, and then multiplied like rabbits. And many tried to educate me as a dog when I was younger, but obviously it didn't work because the true light within me shattered many chains, and many more are being shattered right now. And so it must be with you. And here in the hijacked Iberia, Spain, people clap every day at 8 p.m. to doctors and nurses which are working in hospitals. But the truth is that almost none of the so-called professionals seem to be using their brain. Everyone complains about the lack of respirators, saying this is why most people are dying, and so on. But so far, I have only heard 2 doctors talk about all remedies, which are working very well, actually. For example, the classic vapors of oregano, eucalyptus, and others not only kill viruses but also clear up the nostrils, the lung, airways, and are highly effective if a condition of disease is caught early. Another very important element is vitamin C, which should be administered to patients, and this is not done. This can be even consumed at home naturally with citrics and other products, and it is very well known in medicine that one of the most effective substances used by the body to fight bacteria and viruses is interferon. And interferon is usually concentrated in some medicines, but we can also find it in natural plants, for instance, chamomile. And chamomile is also very good for digestion. Actually, I drink from 2 to 3 infusions of chamomile every day, and I can really sense the effects. It's very relaxing as well. Then there are natural acid remedies. The other day, a brother of light told some of us that he heard an old man say he recovered from the so-called COVID-19 with an old remedy. And this light brother recommended the remedy to a family who called him very worried because they got the virus. And after taking the remedy, they called him back because it had worked very well with them all. And it's very simple. You take a non-GMO, organic or ecological lemon, cut it in 4 pieces, boil them into water with the peel all together, then add 4 aspirins in the boiling water, dissolve it for about 10 minutes, smashing the mixture, then leave it resting until it's a bit colder, and pour a spoon of organic honey to give it taste and increase the immune power of the mixture, and then drink a hot cup, not cold. It must be as hot as possible to be more effective. Then put on garments to help the body sweat, and all this helps to expel many toxins and viruses. Now, in case you do this, do not take the lemon solution with the 4 aspirins on an empty stomach, because you can cause an ulcer and open a hole in the stomach. So having a bit of food in the stomach could be good. And it's funny because that remedy looks like what I used to take as a child when my throat got congested or infected. My mom used to boil orange with peel all together, smashed in boiling water, and it was very nice, very tasty and creamy also. And this worked very well. But I don't think it was vitamin C the cause, because all vitamins are destroyed at 60 degrees. There is something else in the shell which disinfects. And there you have these old remedies, just in case a psychosomatic crisis emerges because of the general toxicity that we experience nowadays. But remember that in a body without excess of mucus and well immunized, viruses cannot work. It is humans who have accepted all the poisons that sociopaths sell us, including the irrational foods and medicines. Sociopaths in general believe themselves with the right to sell those things because people are willing to inject venom into their veins or eat rubbish. But I think we have already done enough standing patiently large corporations that fill our food and environment with garbage to reduce the population. This is why it is important not to fear, to establish a relationship with the true inner light guide, who is our deepest self, coming from the primordial source. And it's not just the mere being of light that got trapped, which is only the lost body of cosmic man, the first Adamic genetics that got trapped into this world, and our genetics that are asleep in ourselves. As the Master said, he came for his own, and his own did not recognize him. But those of us who recognize the Master within, living with unconditional love, the sense of unmodified life, and the light of truth in deep calm, is because we have a new body of light, which came to be religiously known as Holy Spirit, even though it would be more accurate to say the Spirit of the Holy One, Ruach HaKadosh. It is this body what bears the 9 fruits: calm, kindness, joy, long-suffering, patience, faith, and so on. But then we have to develop the mental side, the mind of the Messiah, as it was called, which takes us out of the conflict by discerning all the lies and connecting us to the original source, which is our true home, our true origin. And these revelations are actually what many traditions lacked. This is why they remain anchored in the doctrine of the binary soul, Kundalini worship, and so on. We'll see more of that next day. And for now, thank you very much for listening. If this video was inspiring to you, please give thumbs up to support the channel and help others access it more easily. If you want to receive weekly notifications, subscribe by clicking on the bell. Make your comments and questions as you wish. And until the next time, blessings of unconditional love, unmodified life, integral conscience, and deep, blissful serenity.